morning, everyone. Coming up with a title can sometimes be a difficult thing. One of the titles suggested to me was Dirt, Dogs, and Drunks, which is catchy, but I would have to go into too many details. Suffice it to say, it is dusty around here. Blondie sometimes wants to return to being a street dog, and sailors do like their drink. Another title that was suggested to me was New Neighbors, Old Friends, but maybe that's not so politically correct. That might reflect too much on age, so I've come up with the diplomatic title, New Neighbors, Good Friends. Now, it's time to get on with the day. Enough of my morning musings. 2 days after I published the last video, John and Christy arrived to spend a month working on Imaloa. We were very pleased when the guys here in the yard moved Imaloa next to us. Since John and Christy's stay will be a short one this year, they elected to leave the sunshade that protects Imaloa from the summer sun in place, only moving portions to facilitate movement around the boat. Christy had the great idea of taping heavy-duty plastic to the hulls to protect them from lift strap marks and scratches, and also using old pillows to protect the upper hulls. The four-legged member of the Brisa crew was also extremely pleased with the new neighbors, and her tail never stopped wagging. If she couldn't be in Alaska, she had the next best thing, John and Christy. The only thing missing was the addition of the third boat of our group, Serendipity, with Nick, Ika, and Tala. Maybe next year. The day before John and Christy arrived, I finished work on the seahood. There were some decisions. What width should the painted edge be? The easiest solution was to use the width of the masking tape, but larger or smaller? I chose the larger size. Then deciding on the radius of the curve. I wanted to mimic the non-skid corners on the deck, and it turned out the little jar had the curve I was looking for. After tracing the curve and carefully cutting the tape, I was ready for the kiwi grip. I talked about kiwi grip in episode 105, so I won't bore you with the details, other than to say I intentionally put it on quite thick with a lot of texture because Lee does stand on the hood when he handles the sail. We are happy with how the seahood turned out. Lee and I also began work on the ceiling project. I think we had both been putting it off, finding other more urgent tasks. Now that everything was under control, it was time to begin. Our plans were to do something similar to what we had done in the van. There, we used upholstery to cover up our carpentry inadequacies. The upholstery hides ragged edges and edges that do not fit quite flush. But will it work long-term on the boat? We aim to find out. Our good friend Scott gave us a roll of marine-grade vinyl, and using the excellent Sailrite yardage calculator, we determined we had more than enough material for the project. The ceiling sections vary in width, no section being exactly the same as another. Additionally, there is the curve of the coach roof to account for. We are no experts, and using materials at hand, we made paper patterns, taping newspaper to the furring strips. For complicated curves, we found a large piece of cardboard lying on the ground near the bathrooms. Being careful to never leave the cardboard lying around on the boat. Cardboard can harbor cockroach eggs. We used it to determine the curve around the mast and placement of the hole for the diesel heater flue. Lee cut out the sections using very thin plywood and making lots of trips up and down the ladder to fit the pieces. He used a sander to take off excess wood when a piece was a little too large. We then glued Reflectix insulation to the wood pieces, thinking the Reflectix would be a better choice in a damp environment than using fabric batting or roll-type insulation. We glued the marine vinyl to the Reflectix. However, we did find the Reflectix does have a little texture to its surface that was also mirrored by the vinyl. Using 1/4 inch stainless steel staples, I tacked down the edges. When the upholstered boards were ready for mounting, masking tape was used to mark the ceiling ribs to indicate the location of the furring strips. Once the holes were drilled, a screw with a decorative cover was screwed into place. We thought the ceiling would go a little faster than it has, but we find we are limited by the size of our table and the necessity of clamping the pieces while the glue dries. So far, we are happy with the end result. Definitely an ongoing project. Meanwhile, everyday life continues. The monthly swap meet, which for us is mainly a reason to socialize and have brunch with friends. Our composting head will need changing, and I am prepping the compost material, coconut coir, which comes in a pretty solid compressed block. I add water to the chipped off pieces and let the sun do the work of breaking the coir down into friable material. I might add that it is awfully nice to have a head on the boat that we can use while in the boatyard. And over the past 7+ years, we have been very pleased with our composting head. Blondie, when she is loose and unsupervised, has a tendency to wander farther than I would prefer. I don't mind her passing through the fence near the water for her morning investigations, but she sure hears about it when I catch her coming in through the front gate. Poco, a young street dog that has adopted the yard, may have a home. Ben has been looking after him and is planning on taking Poco home with him, but only after he returns from crewing for a crossing to Baja. So things are looking up for Poco. In the next day or two, we will head north to Steve and Terry's for a few days to visit and pick up supplies to continue the ceiling project and other items we will need for our eventual splash. I also have a list of items to pick up for other cruisers. We will be busy the next few days. When we return and get started with our projects, we will check in again with you. So, until then,